a lot of people think that you've got creative and you've got technology. I think the two are actually very complementary. Lateral thinking is one of the biggest things in creativity. So again, we never focus on the technology, but we focus on like, what's the idea? What's the thing that we need to do?
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Merrick Jones. I'm here with Ricky Bacon, who's the Group Technology Director at Critical Mass. Ricky, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. Good to be here.
You had a provocatively titled post the other day on how a Westworld experience is closer than we think. I was wondering, as experiences become the product, how do you think they're going to replace or augment traditional digital experiences?
So I think technology is surrounding us, like it's everywhere, like we're sitting in the middle of Wi-Fi waves right now. It's only getting more pervasive. So I think that technology itself, experience design, is critical for how we interact with the products, and they're not products anymore because they're part of our lives. We've got mobile pocket computers that we have that everybody has access to the metacortex of all of humanity and the sum total of human knowledge. Like it's right here in our pocket. So we have to think about, how do we use this technology? How do we allow brands to communicate with people in a seamless way and really focus on what the customer needs? That's kind of like the whole philosophy behind experience design.
Seamless is a great word to kind of key in on. You work with Citibank. How do you create those seamless experiences that bridge the sort of physical with the digital?
So we always look at it from not a technology standpoint, but from an experience standpoint, and we have a relentless focus on the customer. So we put ourselves in the customer's place, and sometimes, or not even sometimes, all the time, we do extensive research with actual customers and figure out, what is the experience that we want to deliver? How can we reduce pain points? How can we reduce friction? And then we figure out, is there a technology solution that can actually help us do that? Because technology at its best is a force multiplier for good.
You talked about Generation Omega, the quote, last generation of only humans. How do brands, exist in a world where, we all have chipsets in our brains, or, we've all been editable in some way, based on our DNA? How do brands play in that type of a world?
I don't know that it changes that much from a brand perspective, because at the end of the day, you still have to add value to a customer's life. Why would I use, whether it's a screen in front of my face, if it's AR, VR, whatever, or brain-computer interface? What's the value that the brand adds? Why would I engage with a brand? So I think brands still have to just think about, why would users want to engage with my brand? When you answer that question, then again, the technology kind of disappears. And I mean, brain-computer interfaces, as weird as they sound, will be coming soon. You still need to be thinking about, how does your brand engage in that? How do you add value to somebody's life?
How far off do you actually think the sort of brain-computer interface is? Is it around the corner? Is it 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
So I don't like to speculate anything outside of 3 years, because technology moves too fast. Like vertical asymptote of the exponential rise of technology sort of thing. I would say that it's definitely within my kids' lifetime, which I've got my kids, my oldest is 5. They're definitely going to experience it. How high resolution will it be? Don't know. It's a really hard problem. But Elon Musk is working on it. We've got folks that are actually studying it, and we already have brain-computer interfaces. I can go drop $100 right now and put on something that will actually read my brainwaves. It's just, how high fidelity is it, is the bigger question.
Right, and it's already being used in clinical trials to help with seizures and tremors and things like that, to great success.
Exactly, and I mean, I think that's also another thing when we look at like technology is, how do we make it as inclusive as possible? Because a lot of the stuff, while it sounds fancy, it actually helps people in their everyday lives be more mobile, be like accessible to the environment. So, we've done some voice user interface stuff for one of our brands, and it was a in-room experience. And the biggest insight into that was, well, what about people who normally have to travel, who have mobility issues? actually a voice interface, while it's cool and it's kind of cutting edge last year, it actually helps people who can't travel alone. Because now if they fall down, they would normally have to go to a, try to get to a phone, so they always have to have a partner with them. If they have a voice user interface, Star Trek-like, then they can just call the front desk. So this technology, while a lot of it seems cool and some people think it's pointless, it's actually making things much more accessible to a larger audience and much more inclusive.
I was wondering how you balance the sort of, the data science of your work with the creativity. So, data science is a lot about, pattern recognition, and creativity oftentimes is making that huge leap that doesn't necessarily have an established pattern and doesn't necessarily follow past protocol. How do you balance both the art and science of what you do?
So, my background is a creative technologist, so a lot of people think that you've got creative and you've got technology. I think the two are actually very complementary. Lateral thinking is one of the biggest things in creativity. So again, we never focus on the technology, but we focus on what's the idea, what's the thing that we need to do. I wouldn't call it so much as a balance, is understanding that if you make a lateral jump and connect two disparate ideas together, that's the creative portion. But also having the ability to understand how to execute that and implement it. It goes back to design thinking too, where you've got convergent and divergent thinking. So the divergent thinking is, what are all the possible things we could do? And once you get that, and it's like, oh, these are the things we want to do, then understanding how to execute it. So I don't see it as a balance, it's more of a spectrum. And actually come up with the craziest ideas you can, and then we'll figure out how to make it work.
Nice. Have you noticed any generalities in terms of either technology usage or experiences that you find resonate with one generation versus another? I'll give an example. Older generations might prefer to be informed versus younger generations might prefer for the experience to be based around entertainment. And any observations on that front?
No. What I'll qualify that with is, I think one of the most amazing things that I realized was, so when my oldest son was 3, a couple years ago, he was interacting with the Amazon Alexa. So he was voice interface, he was fascinated. It didn't understand him at all, because there's just diction problems with a 3-year-old speech. Now it does, and he's got a dot in his room, and he interacts with it on almost a daily basis. The flip side of that was that Christmas, I got my wife's uncle a Amazon Echo. And at the age of 70, he was also interacting with it on a daily basis. So when you've got a product that goes from 3 to 70, that's amazing. These experiences, you're not aiming at a specific age group, you're aiming at, well, how do you immerse a person where the experience disappears and that's just where you are. So the technology is getting so immersive these days that I'm not looking at, well, do millennials like this? Does Gen Z like this? Do boomers like this? I'm looking at, how can we engage a 67-year range of ages? And we've got technology that can do that now. So I'm less focused on a specific age range and more about how do we make immersive experiences.
Yeah, the technology sort of blends into the background, and it's just a more human.
It is, and it just feels, and that's why I'm curious. I am curious on how it impacts children growing up. There's the screen time question, which is should we, how much screen time should a kid have? But now I'm wondering, is there a voice time question? So is there a range or a limit that we should have for voice UIs? Don't know.
Using your 3-year time horizon, what do you think is going to be the most important technology to kind of disrupt what you do on a daily basis over the next 3 years?
I think AI is probably the most impactful that's realistic. I think VR is the most impactful, but because of device penetration, we're not actually going to see it, at least in what I do. It's not going to be around for a while. But I think that of the two, VR is actually incredibly powerful. A lot of people, unless you've ever done it, you don't realize just how powerful and it is. So.
Awesome. Ricky, thanks so much.
Thank you.